right now we're looking at a 1 minute time frame. What do you see as a trader? You see high up here at the 920 area. Okay, you got a lower high here, another lower high here. It looks bearish, correct? Everything about this on this time frame, when I'm looking at this with blinders on, where all I'm focused on is the smallest time frame, when I'm looking at that 1 minute time frame or the 5 minute, even on the 5 minute, when I'm looking at that 5 minute chart and I zoom in like this, it's telling me that this looks bearish, right? Everything looks bearish about that. But if I zoom out on the bigger time frame, what do I see? We're going to talk about the idea of before you enter a trade, do this one thing. Do one thing. And I can't guarantee that it's going to make you more profitable, but what I can do is I can guarantee that you're going to be more consistent with your entries and your exits and your overall trade plan, because you're going to actually be able to see that bigger picture. It's going to make everything easier with your emotions and your overall thought process and your overall just trade plan. We're going to talk about it here in this video, what I noticed today, something that I'm working on, something that you guys probably should be working on too. Let's talk about it right here in this video. All right, what's going on, guys? Like I said, this is the 5 minute time frame, and basically what I'm watching on this 5 minute time frame is I got the EMAs. Okay, we've got this little high here at the 8,919 area, and then we got this lower high here. So clearly we're kind of downtrending. This is kind of popping up now, so this has kind of changed the story. But if you go like this and you look, let's say, I'll just put a line right here, kind of a trend line, right? Let's imagine that these candles weren't here, because this kind of happened after this candle break, after this breakout here. But in general, when I'm looking at this and we get rid of these two candles, it looks okay, it looks pretty bearish. Like this thing just wants to go lower, right? It just wants to continue that trend lower, especially with these kind of blow-offs on these candles. These big wicks on the top of these two candles, right? It makes sense. But let's take a look at the bigger picture now. Let's look at a bigger time frame. Let's look at a 15-minute time frame. Wow. Looks a lot different, doesn't it? If you look at the 15-minute time frame, you can see how this has been pulling back to the EMAs multiple times on the 15-minute. And guess what? The last, we got one. We'll say from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5 times that we've touched down to the EMAs, we've done what? We've pushed higher afterwards. So now looking at this at a bigger time frame, it looks like a totally different picture, right? It gives me a totally different idea here for a trade, because when I'm looking at the 5 minute, let's look at 5 minute. I'm looking at the 5 minute, and where these two candles aren't here, if I'm looking at the 5 minute, all I see is that we're below the EMAs, we're trending down, we're making these lower highs there. So if I see those two things and I'm only looking at the 5 minute, it makes sense, right? I'm like, okay, I'm going to short here on these kind of areas. I'm going to short here, because we're trending lower. But the moment that I zoom out here to the 15-minute time frame, it changes everything, because now I see, wow, okay, we're touching down to those EMAs on the 15-minute time frame, and we're then pushing higher. So going from this small time frame on the, on a 1 minute, it's going to be a totally different. Let's say like this, on the 1 minute, it's like, wow, it looks totally like it's just going to crash back down, right? So we're getting lower highs there. So really, we're at a fine area right now. Even on the 1 minute time frame, we got to push through this kind of $80, $900 area. I still think this is a very good experience, not just, again, for me, but also for you guys out there. I know a lot of people will end up trading, and you kind of get into this mindset where you're like, okay, I'm looking for my entry, I'm looking for my exit, I'm looking for my trade, and I'm so focused because I'm in the trade right now. I'm in the trade, I got money on the line, I'm risking money right now. So all I'm focused on is this small time frame. I'm looking at this like, oh wow, what's the volume doing? What's this doing? What's the price action looking like on this 5 minute time frame? Am I looking bullish? Are we gonna get a push? Is this thing gonna move higher? But all I need to do is just take a breath, right? Take a breath here. Go over here. Click on that 15-minute time frame, and everything just looks so much cleaner and so much easier to figure out. Like, hey, this looks pretty good. I'm long from here. I'm long at this 870 area. We've got support there. We got the EMAs. We got this overall trend. We're looking nice and bullish. We've pushed through that previous little sell-off there at the 870 area. We're pushing through resistance. We got some resistance coming up here. We can see all this kind of stuff on the bigger time frame. It gives us a better understanding of which way the stock is heading, which way it's moving, and we're getting just a calming effect. For me, it's a calming effect because, like I said, when you're looking at that 1 minute, you're looking at the 5 minute time frame. It's just like, oh, no real clear indicator other than, hey, it's looking like it wants to crash. But again, zooming out, taking a breath, and looking at it like, wow, this does look pretty good. This looks like it wants to push higher. This looks like an overall trend. We're pushing higher. We're pulling back the EMAs, and then we're pushing higher from there. Especially if we go to like the hourly. Look at the hourly here. On the hourly, I mean, I could buy the dip. I could buy the dip down here at 884 at the 8,840 area, and still overall we still be in that trend heading higher. So looking at multiple time frames. Like I said, I've made videos about this before. I've talked about this before, but this was just a really kind of a good example of how on that 5 minute time frame, it looks like a totally different beast. It looks like a totally different trend. But then when looking at it on that, 15 minute, 30 minute, whatever time frame you want to look at on the bigger picture, it changes everything. So remember, when you're in a trade, when you're trading, whatever you're doing, if you're trading, you're shorting, whatever it is, make sure that you're not only focused on those small time frames, because the small time frames can be full of a lot of fake outs. They can be full of just kind of missed signals where you think something's happening until you zoom out and you look on the bigger time frame, you aren't seeing the bigger picture. So remember to look at bigger time frames. Like I said, especially let's say you look at this bigger time frame, and let's say the price was up here at 8,900. I can see clearly that, every time we got overextended, we made these big moves to the upside. Guess what? The stock pulled back. Stock pulled back multiple times to those EMAs. So what is that? That's telling me one thing. That, hey, there's no point in chasing this. I don't need to chase this. Maybe it goes higher. Maybe it pushes up. Maybe it squeezes, Maybe it does. But I'm telling you one thing. I'm pretty darn sure that at some point here, whatever stock, whatever you're trading, is going to pull back to that overall moving average. And then at that point, I can kind of figure out like, hey, this is what I want to do from here. This is the median. This is the moving average for a reason. This is a reason that moving average is there, because it's kind of telling us which way that stock is moving, what's the natural movement of that stock. So remember to really just zoom out sometimes and ask yourself, probably, I would say is before you enter a trade, either short or long, whatever you're doing, whatever trade you're making, before you enter a trade, if you're looking at the 1 minute chart and you're like this, okay, I'm looking here on the 1 minute chart, and then, okay, now before I enter this trade, I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to go to at least a 5 minute. Okay, on the 5 minute, we're kind of touching down on the EMAs there on the 5 minute. Let me go a little bit bigger. Okay, we got some support there. So I can give myself a breath, give myself a chance to kind of make sure I'm focusing on the bigger picture here before entering the trade. And I can see, okay, where's that resistance? What's going on? What's the bigger picture telling me? Right now, we've got a beautiful trend going. Do I want to be short? Do I really want to short up here knowing that every time we've pulled back to the EMA, we bounced? Maybe there's 40 points there, $40, whatever, drop. But in general, if I'm seeing this overall trend, if I'm just waiting and if I'm being patient, if I'm just waiting for that setup to come to me, where the point where like, okay, this pulls back, it shows that it's kind of to curl off the EMA, it's going to push back up there, then it's like a totally different time. It's a totally different trade at that point, because I'm in the driver's seat, because I'm watching and I know, okay, the stock's pulling back. This is natural. This is going to happen. Once it pulls back, I'm going to look for my entry on this defined area. And then once I do that, then it's much easier to kind of hold your trade, to have confidence in your trade, to have an overall game plan. It's also way easier to cut it off, because let's say, hey, I'm going to buy here at the 850 area, right? Right in this area. Okay, my stop's going to be here at the 840 area. That's easy to see on that 15-minute time frame. And going into that trade, I can basically be like, hey, that makes sense. But if I sit here and look, okay, it's a little bit different. We got a little bit of support there. But in general, just taking a little bit of time to kind of, remove yourself from that FOMO, that moment where the stock is either going higher or you got that emotion where you want to buy, you want to sell, whatever it is. Just taking a deep breath, zooming out, bigger time frame, and then kind of seeing, okay, looks good. This is what I want to do. This is my plan from here. I've validated this idea on multiple time frames. I've validated that the stock is in a trend. I've validated this stock is bouncing, off of these EMAs. There's a reason for me to buy, or there's a reason for me to sell at the top here. And those are very key things. Those are key things that are going to make you more consistent, because you're able to, not just jump into a trade. How many times have you jumped into a trade and you've gotten right out of the trade because all of a sudden the stock did something you did not expect? But when you look at these bigger time frames, you can expect more. You can kind of be like, hey, I expect if I do jump in here, if I jump in here at 880, there's a chance it's going to pull back to the EMA, because that's kind of what it's been doing. That's something to expect. That's the natural movement of these stocks. Stocks move in waves, up, down, up, down, up, down, in these wave formations. Every time Bitcoin gets really overextended, we get that pullback. It's overextended, get a pullback. We consolidate. And that's natural. So understanding that and having that in your mind, before going into the trade is going to make it that much easier. So again, bigger time frames, small time frames, whatever you're trading, just take a second before entering the trade. Take a second, look at that bigger time frame. Tell yourself, hey, I like it on that big time frame and on the small time frame. When you like it on multiple time frames, that's just gonna make it that much easier to be that much more consistent, because you're validating your thesis on multiple time frames. So there it is. Validate your thesis, take a breath, zoom out, and then look for an entry, look for a trade after figuring out what the bigger picture is telling you. Bigger picture, my friends.
If you're still watching this video, don't worry. There's a lot more videos right here on the #1 day trading channel for you to check out and learn more about day trading. So don't be afraid and check out these videos right over here. 1, 2, newest and latest and greatest videos for you to check out. Also, hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't already.